kind of need to go into this situation with an air of caution because these men are likely using at the time of this attack.
Perhaps like the best bit of like lore for like the entire game is right outside the gas station on like a bulletin board. When the meth heads rushed this place, it was like hard and fast.
Hey everyone, I'm Isaac. This is Shane.
Hello, hello.
And welcome to this first in a series of lore deep dives. We're going to be going level by level in Ready or Not, breaking down the narrative details, environmental storytelling elements, and all of those fun little subplots that you might easily miss if you're playing this game just trying not to die.
And maybe getting an S rank, but probably not. Isaac, you and I are both pretty knowledgeable at this point in Ready or Not lore, right? Like both of our channels, Isaac Morgan and Shane Please Shut Up, have a lot of in-depth coverage about this game. But today we're doing things a little bit differently.
Right, yeah. A nice, cozy little fireside chat about some of the darkest themes and plots I've probably ever seen in a video game. But with all of that being said, let's get into it.
And what better place to start than just talking about the overall world of Ready or Not? Because I think my favorite aspect about this game is the fact that it's technically takes place in like a different timeline.
Right.
You know, it's Los Sueños is, you know, it's equivalent to Los Angeles, but, you know, the different being, you know, instead of, you know, Los Angeles, you know, the city of angels, it's Los Sueños, you know, i.e. the city of dreams. And
yeah.
just right there is like my favorite part, because once you have a universe or a story disconnected from, you know, history, you can do so much stuff. And, you know, as we will see as we, you know, dive deeper into this series, like Los Sueños is quite different from, you know, modern LA or just anything in the world is quite different from our current reality.
Right. Well, you know, you sit there and you say City of Dreams, but, you know, anybody that gets deep into the game, it's probably more apt to call it the City of Nightmares with how dangerous and how corrupt everything is in it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
well, I mean, a nightmare is still a dream.
Yeah. I suppose you're right. But
that was deep, right?
You know, that's probably like the first thing that I really noticed when I played the game, right? You walk into that first level and you see all of the homeless encampments and all of, you know, the boarded up windows and graffiti and stuff. And being someone that lives in a rural spot far away from the city, I was like, oh my God. You know, Los Sueños, this is like Gotham. What's going on here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's insane because I think the cool thing that they do also in like the world building is they take a lot of real world issues and then like crank it up to like the worst possible, you know, example of what it could be. So, for instance, Los Sueños is considered California's most dangerous city. And as I said before, it's analogous to LA, but it's a little bit deeper than that. It's geographically different. So Los Sueños is along the border, the US-Mexico border, which traditionally is where San Diego should be. And in this new location and all the stuff they added, they can add so much more a world building around it. For instance, there is a drought right along the border, and some mentions of a drought affecting the greater area. In fact, we'll probably talk about it in later episodes, but right. There is a power crisis affecting the greater Los Sueños area, and that kind of creates a trickle-down effect that affects like so many different layers of the city, you know, and the power crisis affects, you know, the local inhabitants, which could create a crisis with, you know, job security, which creates, you know, potential homeless people, which creates, you know, potential crime increase, and so on and so forth. It's all this massive trickle-down effect, and I think that's really interesting from a, you know, a narrative standpoint, and allows so much creativity to really flesh out all of these, you know, crime scenes that we investigate all throughout this game.
And just like how you said, it's one of the only games I've really played where you get to see this crime on so many different levels, right? You'll see what you'd expect to see, right? You see, like how we're going to be discussing today, just random stick-ups that occur at gas stations. But then you'll also, the further that we start to get into this series, we're going to start seeing some really heavy-duty criminal operations going on. And I find it really interesting that, all of this really stems from these issues that you're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is such a cool aspect about it. But I mean, even in terms of alternate history world stuff, this first mission that we're talking about today, Thank You, Come Again, that in terms of a opening mission to the overall, world of Ready or Not, to the overall state of the city, just this beginning mission offers just so many little tiny tidbits that a lot of people probably don't notice on their first playthrough. With that being said, we should dive into the first mission here, Thank You, Come Again, and break down just what's going on, the perpetrators, the situation, and really dive into all the nitty-gritty lore bits that just are very interesting.
So, Shane, what essentially happens to get this whole ball rolling here is that we receive a 911 call from both a manager and a civilian inside of a nearby 4U gas station where a robbery is currently unfolding. We're given word that all of the intruders are armed and that this robbery just so happened to take place right at the same time as a money pickup. So it seems that this robbery may have been planned pretty far in advance.
And speaking of DeBanco specifically, as soon as we start, we can turn around and see their corporate headquarters. And that is a good pivot point to talk about one of the biggest in-city lore, issues happening with everything going on there. So basically, DeBanco is I guess you call him like a cash pickup and transfer company. I don't know what you call those.
Sort of like a security truck company. Yeah. So they're like a security company that pick up and transfer money from ATMs and from businesses and all that stuff. And the issues plaguing Los Sueños, being high crime, has resulted in most of the employees for the company going on strike. Right.
And because of that resulted in a massive,
it's like a walkout, like a protest.
A financial issue, like a big walkout, because no money is getting transferred anywhere. So people don't have access to their money. So there's like a minor financial crisis occurring. And then meanwhile, while this is going down, if you look around, there's like garbage everywhere. And you can also find out on this map that there is a garbage strike occurring at the same time. So you have these two massive issues happening at the same time, and just the city is not doing so well. And obviously, people aren't getting their money. There's trash piling up everywhere, and that really pushes a lot of people to, do crazy things. For instance, the suspects of today's mission.
Right. And it's funny that you should mention them, Shane, because in our briefing, it's also implied that these guys have got quite a heavy drug problem and that this robbery was mainly to get money for more drugs. So we kind of need to go into this situation with an air of caution because these men are likely using at the time of this attack. And as we start to make our way towards the building, we can sort of see that these guys didn't have good intentions at all when it came to this robbery, right? We see the homeless man who's been shot laying out next to one of the gas pumps. And the closer that we make our way to the building, the more sort of chaos that we can hear unfolding inside.
So before we even get into the gas station, just the outside of the map, just the outside of the gas station itself, lends itself to tons of environmental storytelling. And perhaps like the best bit of like lore for like the entire game is right outside the gas station on like a bulletin board. There are teases and hints towards so many storylines found all throughout this game. You have tons of tiny little missing persons posters. That's like, at first it's like, oh, that's weird. But then, that eventually, if you know where the story goes, it's like, oh shit, that ties in there.
Yikes.
It gets mentioning of Mindjot, which another thing we'll talk about later, the USIA, which is a very big thing we'll talk about later. But it goes even further. It talks about the walkouts, the debunko strikes, the garbage strikes, all that stuff.
There's all sorts of foreshadowing. I have to agree, man. And not to cut you off, but just like how you said, there's even more sort of that narrative being built up of what we've been told. Because if we look on the outside of the building, we also have all of the ATMs that are out of service and all of those sorts of things too, that are showing us that Los Sueños isn't really a great place to be, right? I mean,
no. But it's like, as shitty as Los Sueños is, though, it's like, if you look at the gas prices, it's still close to reality, which is the saddest part. Oh, God, that $5 gas, man. No, it's not.
My condolences, dude.
It's not much different in real California, man, I gotta say. But
I do notice that is like one of the biggest things that I've noticed just in my conversations about this level in particular. Everybody's like, oh, well, it's not so far off after all.
No. I mean, yeah, even when we like go further and look at like some of like the prices of like food inside the restaurants, like, oh, so it's dystopian, but not that much dystopian. It's pretty close.
Gosh.
But I mean, before we go inside too, but if you look around some of the other things outside, for instance, the police cars, there's a couple police cars out there, and just looking at them also gives you more, insight on the overall state of the city. So the police cars have like these cages over the windows, like they're like reinforced or something.
Oh, like the riot cages, yeah.
Yeah, they have like riot cages over the windows, and I would assume that's not standard issue. Like I feel like that's probably reserved for special circumstances.
I would say so.
Yeah, but if you have those on like a standard police cruiser, that tells me there's some issues going on. and not just that, but like even the model of the car, it's not necessarily a modern police cruiser. So that also lends to the fact that maybe the LSPD are underfunded, and you have all this crises, whatever the plural of crisis is, all these things going on in the city, and you have a police department that can like barely afford to like upgrade their vehicles, and so instead they just weld on, cages to their cop cars.
And building off of that, man, if I'm not mistaken, isn't there like, when you look at the briefing, you have the map, and I'm fairly certain that like the map is like dated to the 1980s, right? So they're working with a lot of just outdated and like completely, a modern police department in a city that big should definitely be more well equipped for the situations. The LSPD doesn't seem to have that.
No. Yeah, especially if we assume the game likely takes place in like the 2020s, 2025 or something like that. And if it's around that time, they should probably have some modern or at least updated intel regarding, a gas station of all places, or have vehicles that are up to date with, the growing issues plaguing the city.
You would hope.
Yeah, you would definitely hope. But yeah, moving on inside to this gas station, we can talk about the first half, because the gas station's actually divided into two parts. You have your standard convenience store kind of thing. Then on the back half, there is like a restaurant. So starting with the convenience store, we can kind of get a sense that when the, we'll just call them meth heads for now, when the meth heads rushed this place, it was like hard and fast. They just ran in and just caused a scene, kicked open the back door, and were just, going crazy right off the bat. There wasn't, if there was any semblance of a plan, it went out the door as soon as they went in the door. And I want to mention this because this is also a really interesting bit of overall intel about the mission. If you look on the counter of the, right by the bulletproof glass where you can, buy stuff, there's a magazine that mentions, climate crises happening, water shortages, and all this stuff. But to me, what stands out as the most interesting bit of lore about not just Los Sueños, but the Ready or Not universe is it mentions America's 52nd president. Now, I'm pretty sure we're on number 47 right now.
So the math there isn't quite mathing, man.
No, it doesn't quite add up. So that to me tells me that whatever issues are happening in Los Sueños is also, at least across the country. Because we don't go through that many presidents that quick. So like something happened, something big to the point where we rushed that many presidents to get to 52. Like if it's one president, right? It's like, okay, maybe somebody died in office, but that's a lot.
Yeah.
We're 47 to 52. Like what's going on there?
So at some point, even in the first mission, it's sort of already being suggested to us that there's a I don't want to say timeline split, but there's a big event somewhere in the past that has had quite a significant effect on the United States, and we're feeling the repercussions of that. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, how do you go through 5 presidents? Or I guess theoretically 5 presidents.
And I mean,
like that's crazy.
You see some of the later events in the game too, and it's like assassination would not be too. You know what I mean? Like these are possibilities that aren't too far out there. So, wow, that really is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like in terms of like overall lore, that implies there are so many ways you can take that question or like look at that question. Cause maybe a president died in office. I mean, yeah, that's likely, but 5 times in a row, probably not. Maybe one was impeached. Yeah, that could have happened. But again, 5 times in a row, probably not. So like they must have like been a series of assassinations hitting the US at some point. Who knows? And if that is the case, then maybe that means assassinating political figures in this universe is a lot more common than in ours. And that, hint where that could go in the future.
There's no telling, man. I mean, we've already seen, I believe that the senator was a candidate for president at one point, was he not? And
I believe so.
We're already seeing that. So, I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised if that came back up in the future. But before we get too sidetracked talking about the future and all this, we still have a robbery to solve and a lot of perps to take down.
That's right. And speaking of perps too, the overall, we'll get into some conspiracies here, but when we first look at our intel, we are told that there are 3 suspects on site. However, when we arrive on site, there's 4. And I mean, that's not a huge, thing, but that is kind of weird that a whole person wasn't even included in the debrief. And as we explore a bit of the map, there are some things that don't quite add up in my mind. So for instance, we can see through some like sticky notes and notes left behind from the employees working there that there's some tension between some of the employees. Like I think one person even leaves like a laxative sandwich for somebody who keeps stealing his food, which brilliant, by the way. That's a fantastic idea.
Do not poison your coworkers, listeners, please.
Don't poison them unless they deserve it.
The podcast does not condone.
Unless they deserved it. Anyway, but so there might be some tension going on between these employees. And if we start looking at some of these notes, we see that some things aren't kind of odd. So they mention that, okay, there's going to be a cash pickup, at the end of the week or whatever it says. So they know exactly when the banco's going to show up and get all their money and, transfer it. And that I would imagine is very closely guarded information.
Yeah, that's like, you don't just tell like the waitress that's going on, right? That's like someone fairly high up within this, this management at the gas station is, so it seems anyway that they've sort of arranged this, somebody with insider information. And it's funny you should say that, Shane, because if you do manage to complete the mission on an S rank, not to jump the gun here, there's actually notes that we can receive from one of the criminals, Andre Williams, if I'm not mistaken. And in it, it literally says something along the lines of, the kid said that there was $15K in the safe. So who else would know that information than an employee, right? I mean, they're not just guesstimating, surely.
Yeah, because I mean, the likelihood of 4 armed robbers showing up at the exact minute that a cash pickup is about to happen,
right? Yeah,
that's next to impossible. So clearly something's going on. And it's not just that, because I think there's even mentioning of like some of the doors not locking properly, and even the safe itself hasn't even, there was a recording that the manager, Mudasir Varma, had on his desk, that if you listen to the recording, they talk about, there's something going on with the safe not locking properly.
Oh.
And they also mentioned something about like another issue that they need to talk about in private, and perhaps that issue may include, or maybe involving one of the employees, getting into an altercation or something like that, and maybe they're jaded and had some friends and like, hey guys, there's a robbery. If you want some money, you can start a robbery this exact day, and cut me some of that money.
Right. And I mean, like, if you follow that train of thought, it's honestly not a horrible idea on the part of the employee, right? It's like, if they're leaving anyway, they sit there and they say, well, I'm going to get my share of a $15,000 bonus, is probably what's going through their head, right? So, it seems that the relationships at the gas station are pretty bad to begin with. Like, like you just said, the poisoning of the other employee with the laxatives or whatever. But it's like, if I was working there, I wouldn't be surprised if like my coworker tried to rob the place, right? I mean, that's where my mind goes.
Like going back to the laxative thing, like that in and of itself is like fucking crazy. Can you imagine if somebody did that at your work? Like, I mean, obviously don't steal your coworker's food, but also if you are stealing your coworker's food, then you kind of deserve that. But I mean, the just to do that in the first place, that means like you must really hate this person.
What I thought was really funny was that he left a note about it, like admitting to it. He was like,
exactly.
I want you to know it was
he was
me.
Like, exactly. That's so clearly there's been some massive interpersonal issues at this gas station, and someone, whoever it was, and in fact, I think at this point it doesn't really matter who that individual was, because whatever their initial plan was went out the door as soon as the incident with Mudasir occurred. Because as we go into the back room, we can find the manager, Mudasir Varma, we can find his body. Something happened. In fact, I believe it's during the 911 call.
It is.
One of the suspects shot him and killed him. So clearly that was not supposed to happen. If it was supposed to be an inside job, get in, get the money, get out, something went wrong. And as we know, these suspects were all high on meth during this operation or this robbery, and something went wrong and they got jumpy and then killed the manager. And that resulted in the LSPD sending their SWAT unit out to go, clean house. And that is just a crazy series of events.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly could have been a variety of things too, man. Like you just said, it could have been, meth heads aren't really known to be reliable and calm under pressure, from what I've come to learn, So they could have been jumpy. They could have been freaked out and shot the manager. It could have been something like the manager recognized the face or anything. You know what I mean? Because a lot of the intruders weren't wearing masks or anything. So it could have been a series of different things that led to this going wrong. But what we know now is that it's just our job to come in and pick up the pieces and sort of bring this thing to an end, right?
Yeah. And it's, all things considered, out of all the missions in Ready or Not, this one's probably the easiest, because, there's only 4 suspects and not well armored. And again, it really shows you the state that this city is in. People are desperate. They're are willing to go rob a gas station for, $15,000 or whatever it is. And when things go wrong, they had no other option. They're just going to stand their ground because, what else could they do? They run, but they're going to get caught, and just it was not a good situation for them. Any way you can cut it, it was always going to end badly for them. But speaking of the rest of the map, the part we haven't really discussed yet is the restaurant. Towards the back of, I guess, is it a restaurant or a diner? Same thing.
I would say a diner. Yeah, I get a diner vibe off of it.
Yeah. But yeah, as we're looking around this this diner, the biggest thing that stands out is the dead veteran.
Right.
On the ground, we can see he attempted to stop the robbery, but if you look closely at his gun, the bullet jammed. And it resulted in him dying. And not just him, but his dog as well, which is, yeah. So that veteran right there, if we look at his table, that expands the overarching lore of this map even further. And if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, of course, man. I mean, the thing I love about this game the most, right, and the people, I don't know who exactly is the guy behind the scenes. It's like, oh, we're going to throw this detail here and this detail there. But for a first, I don't want to say tutorial, but like an introductory mission in this game, for it to have this like massive overarching plot to it, like if you really go and read the fine print, you can see traces of stuff that we'll see throughout the rest of the game. And I love that. But yeah, just like how you said, there's a little poster on the guy's table that if you read it, it says something along the lines of stop the anti-vet bill. So evidently, after looking at this, there's some sort of, legislation that was passed that is not in the favor of veterans. And we'll later come to find out that has some significant repercussions on the people that let that bill pass.
Yeah, and again, add another tally mark to the world is shit in this universe. But that goes down to the whole all the little details cascading to a larger conflict.
Right.
So you have the anti-vet bill, the funding cut bill, and that will lead into something else. You have the garbage crisis that will lead into something else. You have the Banco that will, has led into this current crisis. But there are so many little details all across this, for lack of a better term, this tutorial map that just overall connect to so many little things all across the entire game. And this veteran is, again, at first glance, it's like, oh, it was a good Samaritan who, tried to stand up, but sadly lost his life. But that one sign connects him to future situations, shall we say.
It's insane. It's insane to me, dude. It genuinely is. Like, seeing how, just like how you said, when people are playing that level, they probably, if they're anything like me anyway, they probably go up and they don't even pay attention to the vet because they see the poor dead dog laying right there. And you're like, oh my God, these evil meth heads came in and shot this dog.
Horrible
how
people.
Could they, right? That's one of my favorite bits on the game is like, I did a poll on my channel before and I asked people, I was like, hey, what was the moment in the game that sticks out the most to you? And a lot of the response was, it wasn't the human trafficking, it wasn't the massive, underground drug ring or all of this crazy stuff we'll discuss later. It was the dead dog in the first level. That was like their line in the sand where they're like, that's too far.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there's any other dogs on any other map, right?
Oh, wow.
I think that's the only map.
I think you are right. I don't think I've ever noticed another dog in a level.
Yeah. Which makes it even worse.
Yeah. Well, it's, every level seems to, at least in my experience, has had like that sort of like gut punch moment where you're like, oh, damn, did they really show that? And they did.
Yeah.
And I think that's, kind of like a good introduction to that, I suppose. Like it's never nice seeing that, but I mean, from a story and a kind of game design perspective, that's like a good, like, it shows you what you're getting into in this city.
Yeah.
Right. There's no holds barred. There's nothing being held back. And ladies and gentlemen, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's only going to get worse from here. Like this is the tip of a very dark iceberg, right?
Yeah. God, I think you described it perfectly. Like every mission has that gut punch, and progressively those gut punches get worse. And I'm sure those of you who have finished the game and played through, you guys know like the biggest ones, but it's every single mission has that, you think it's one thing, then, oh, fuck you, it's a dead dog.
Right.
It's something else. It like blindsides you with something else, or just some crazy, other unexpected, situation or variable. And I think, again, for a introductory level, explaining, these little tiny bits that at first time players, they won't understand. They won't understand what, what's this anti-vet bill? What does this veteran have to do with anything? The further you play the game, it's like, oh shit, that connects back to there.
Right.
And this connects to that, and that connects to this. And you start, getting your conspiracy board up, and you start connecting the dots, and you start going crazy, and you're looking at things, and it's like, oh my God, it's all connected.
Right. And I really do think that this level in particular, it took me I don't want to say several playthroughs because people are going to like laugh at me down in the comments, but it took me a couple of times of playing this level before I finally noticed these details and kind of put it together. Oh, yeah. Right. But the anti-vet bill is going to be at the crux of this, or not necessarily this particular story, but it's going to be very, very important going forward. So please just try to keep that in the back of your mind as you listen to this, that the vets are being screwed over by the government, right? The people that they fought for are sort of giving them the short end of the stick, so to speak. And we're going to see the effects of that very, very soon.
So to wrap things up, after you rescue all the civilians, including Crystal Layton, who was a child here that was separated from her mother, you can find her in the kitchen, safe and sound. After you eliminate all the hostiles or pepperball them if you're, good at the game, you arrest everybody and the day is saved, and you do a good job and everybody goes home happy. But that is basically all of the lore and little tiny secrets that you can find on this map. As we've been saying countless times throughout this podcast, is that there are tiny little things that at first it's like, okay, who cares about, a computer company called MindJot? Why do they matter? It's like, well, if you stick around, that becomes a massive faction. It's like, who cares about this vet holding a poster, like a protest? Why is he protesting for the anti-vet? It's like, well, something happens. It's all these tiny things, all these little setups that will all get paid off.
There's so much in this first level. Like when me and Shane were first kind of coming together and talking about what we were going to mention in this episode, we had to cut out so many just like tiny details that could lead into entire tangents, right? Because there's just an insane amount of just tendrils that this game has. And this particular level, like that bulletin board in particular, is just insane with details, and it's got all sorts of world building in it. But as I mentioned before, we noticed that there's been significant pushback from these veterans. They're evidently protesting, and once we see that poster, it's clear that they're fighting against some sort of anti-vet bill. But at the moment, we don't really know what this is. But hopefully, as we continue down this veteran storyline, we'll be able to find more answers for those questions soon. But I imagine after all of that rambling, we've just about covered Thank You, Come Again. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to stay tuned because there will be a lot more around the corner. If any of you would like to follow Shane or me on social media, you can find me at The Isaac Morgan on Instagram.
Or at Shane the Doyle on Instagram for me as well. You can also find both of our YouTube channels linked down below in the description. But with that being said, don't do meth and rob a convenience store, and we will see you next time.